Senator Elizabeth Warren is out, which is great because she was awful, just awful, off-putting, annoying, a congenital liar, just awful. We actually have a clip of her announcing, because she's a Native American, right? I mean, that's what she claimed for years. We have a clip of her announcing her actual dropout. It's kind of sad. It was a touching moment.
Hear me, my chiefs. I'm tired. My heart is sick and sad. I will fight no more.
Guys, that was the wrong clip, guys. I mean, yeah. By the way, okay, note to media. Me making fun of Elizabeth Warren for claiming she's Native American is not me making fun of Native Americans. It's me making fun of a horrible person who claimed she was Native American for years to gain affirmative action benefits, which is a terrible thing to do. Okay, so Elizabeth Warren was awful in every way. So her actual concession speech, her actual I'm out of the race, was basically, I'm a woman, I'm a victim, everyone's victimized me because I'm a woman. It's just terrible. Okay, let me make something clear to Elizabeth Warren. If Elizabeth Warren were a man, she would have performed like Beto O'Rourke, except worse, because Beto was at least from Texas. Elizabeth Warren performed horribly because she's a horrible candidate. She's a horrible candidate. The only reason that she was even at the top of the race for one single solitary moment is because she was a woman. The New York Times endorsed her explicitly because she was a woman. The attention she got was largely predicated on the supposed connection she had with women. By the way, she lost women in her home state of Massachusetts to Joe Biden. Women voted for Joe Biden over Elizabeth Warren. So what, are all those women internalizing the patriarchy? Or do they find her just as off-putting as the rest of sentient human life does? She's terrible. She's absolutely awful. The reason that she lost is because, number one, she's a bad candidate who does stupid things and says stupid things. And number two, she made a couple of basic strategic errors. Strategic error number one, early on in the race, Elizabeth Warren had a choice. She had to pick a lane. Was she going to pick the left lane, the Bernie Sanders lane, or was she going to pick the moderate lane, the Joe Biden lane? She chose the Bernie Sanders lane. She figured that Sanders' support would be easier to steal than Joe Biden's support, and then she could bridge over into the Biden lane. So she endorsed Medicare for all, and that was the death knell for her campaign, because her second move was to release a plan about Medicare for all. And as it turns out, Medicare for all is exorbitantly expensive, and you have to lie in order to get to numbers that make sense. And so she lied to get to numbers that make sense, because she lies about everything. And people picked apart the lies, and she started to sink in the polls. And so Elizabeth Warren collapsed. And so now you're hearing from the media the same sort of wailing you heard about Kamala Harris. Oh, America's racist because they didn't nominate Kamala Harris. No, Kamala Harris isn't the nominee because she was a garbage candidate. Elizabeth Warren is not the nominee because she was a garbage candidate. But here's Elizabeth Warren whining about maybe there will never be a female president now that my hopes have been dashed. Okay, first of all, Hillary Clinton was the nominee last time. She won a majority of the popular vote. If she'd been slightly less lackluster, she didn't even have to be a good candidate. If she'd been slightly less lackluster, if she had not collapsed into a van in the last 3 weeks of the campaign, if she had not had a story breaking in the New York Times the weekend before that they were reopening her email investigation, she's probably the president right now, Hillary Clinton. Okay, so spare me the America is sexist. It's amazing. The left has a premise. The premise is that Americans are awful. And so every time Americans do something that proves that they are not awful, even in the view of the left, that only lasts for the amount of time that Americans are doing the not awful thing. Then they go back to the default state of being awful. So when Barack Obama was president, Americans had proved for a brief moment they were not racist because we are the only westernized country in human history that has elected a person of a minority race to the head of the country. Okay, this has never happened in Western Europe. I'm not aware of a single Western European country that has ever elected somebody of a racial minority to lead the country. The United States elected a member of a racial minority. Black Americans represent about 13% of the population. We, the American people, I didn't vote for him. The American people, an overwhelmingly white country, elected a black man to be president of the United States. And for the moment, the media was like, oh, maybe Americans aren't so racist. Then Barack Obama was no longer president. And if you didn't vote for Kamala Harris, it was because you were racist again. Okay, well, last time around, Democrats voted to nominate Hillary Clinton. And now we get the entire lament that if Elizabeth Warren had been a man, then she would have been the nominee here. If Elizabeth Warren had been a man, she would have been one of the first candidates out if she'd been a man. I mean, just a fact. But here she is whining about there being no female president.
And I wonder what Senator your message would be to the women and girls who feel like we're left with two white men to decide between.
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
Who thinks that little girls are sitting around? Like, I have a 6-year-old girl. You think she's sitting around going, I can't believe Elizabeth Warren's out because now there's not a female president. You know what my daughter doesn't give 2 craps about this? You know why? Because nobody does. Because if you're a little girl in the United States, you are living the best life that any little girl has ever lived. Okay, girls in the United States have wonderful, incredible lives on average. The idea that you had to make a woman president, Elizabeth Warren president. By the way, they're not going to have any of these nice words to say about Nikki Haley when she's running in 2024, are they? When you have a Republican woman running. Remember how they treated Sarah Palin? You remember all the female solidarity around Sarah Palin as the VP candidate? Remember how all the women came out of the woodwork and talked about how wonderful it was that there was a female VP candidate? Yeah, I don't remember that either because it never happened. Instead, it was she's not a real woman. That was the rip. She wasn't a real woman. Also, just a quick note. I'm always amused by Democrats like Elizabeth Warren who suggest it is imperative. We must have a female president. Deeply, deeply necessary to have a female president. Also, a man can be a woman. Okay, you're going to have to pick. Either gender is a social construct and therefore it does not matter and is completely malleable, or femaleness matters and you need a female president. You cannot have it both ways. You're going to need to explain to me, like if Donald Trump declared himself a woman tomorrow, could Elizabeth Warren complain about it? If Donald Trump came out and was like, guess what, guys? Boom, I'm the first female president. Didn't see that one coming, did you? Ha, 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 ha. Good. What would Elizabeth Warren have to say about that? He should do it just to get her goat. It would be hysterically funny. The media continue to maintain that this is all about Elizabeth Warren being a girl. Kamala Harris, another failed candidate, she says, well, I have legitimate questions about whether it's hard to be a woman. Your legitimate question should be why you, with every intersectional advantage, were one of the first candidates to drop out. Maybe you're just bad at your job. Maybe it's that. Again, the New York Times only endorsed Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar because they're both women. That is the only reason. Because Warren and Klobuchar disagree on a lot of things. They endorsed both because they were women. Stop telling me that being a woman in American politics is this grave disadvantage when Democrats nominated the popular vote winner, a woman, last time, and when all of the immediate conventional wisdom frontrunners in the Democratic primaries were women, like Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, and just flamed out because they're bad. Here's Kamala Harris whining.
I think that we all know, and this election cycle in particular, has also presented very legitimate questions about the challenges of women running for president of the United States.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's obvious. Just look at what's happened. There are no women currently in this race. But the reality is that there is still a lot of work to be done to make it very clear that women are exceptionally qualified and capable of being the commander-in-chief of the United States of America.
Okay, Tulsi Gabbard's standing over here like, hey, well, how about me? How about me? I've got all the genetics. I'm over here. I think Tulsi Gabbard's still in the race, by the way. But Kamala Harris saying that there are so many questions to be answered. Okay, again, maybe the question that needs to be answered is why you're terrible at your job. Maybe that's the question we should start asking. It's incessantly ridiculous. Truly. These are all Democratic voters, by the way. So they're ripping on their own Democratic base. They're saying that Democratic voters are a bunch of sexists. So enjoy. They've already called their own voting base sexist and racist. I hope they continue to do this. Of all the self-serving nonsense, this probably was my favorite. An ex-Hillary aide came out on national television and said, well, you know, what we really need, Zerlina Maxwell, she worked as director of progressive media for Hillary Clinton. She said that Elizabeth Warren would have done better if she were a man. False. Fact check, false. Also, she suggested that, you know, we need men to push for women to lead, not just to wait till they have wives and daughters to realize that women are people too. How about women realize that women are people too, and some women are better than others at particular things? How about that? But no, apparently all women, so the things I've learned from the media in the last 2 years, believe all women never lie, and every woman who runs for president should win. Alternatively, that's a bunch of crap, and some women are great at politics, and some women suck at politics. And some women lie, and some women tell the truth, just like all other human beings. Here's Zerlina Maxwell being a dolt.
We have never had a woman president. And for some reason, it seems like only women are concerned about this fact. And I would like more men to be vocal about the fact that they want to see women in positions of leadership. Don't say, oh, well, we can just pick Kamala as the vice president. Why does a woman have to settle for the number 2 job in 2020?
Hold on. She's not settling for anything. She didn't earn the votes. You don't get to choose which position you hold. Okay, you know how many Americans would like to be president? A lot. You don't get to choose. Why does she have to settle? She has to settle because she failed, because she flamed out, because she was a crap candidate. It all, again, goes to this basic narrative, this basic left-wing narrative, which is that equality of outcome is the only proof that equality of opportunity was provided. That only if an equal number of women and men end up as president did women have the opportunity to run for president. And that's just not true. It's not true. Maybe some of these candidates were bad. Maybe Joe Biden had an inherent advantage because he was vice president. Maybe Bernie Sanders had an inherent advantage because he's been running for president for the last 4 years nonstop. and had a built-in base. It turns out that the two most viable candidates from the beginning with the largest bases were also the candidates who are there at the end. Is that any grave shock?